Welcome to the Filmcast's review of Beau is Afraid. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. Following the sudden death of his mother, a mild-mannered but anxiety-ridden man confronts his darkest fears as he embarks on an epic Kafka-esque odyssey back home, end quote. So, Beau is Afraid. This is a movie that's been out in theaters for a few weeks. It cost around $35 million to make. Ari Aster, obviously somebody whose work has been uh, polarizing, celebrated, but somebody who I have admired, if not appreciated, in the past. Um, Devindra Hardawar, I think you have had a mixed track record when it comes to Ari Aster. Like, I don't
No,
know that you
I've
were
liked
big.
his stuff. I've liked all his stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I haven't gone back and listened to the reviews on Hereditary and Midsommar, but what did you think of Beau is Afraid?
Um, Probably this is my least favorite Ari Aster movie, but like all of his movies, I think it's very, very interesting. It's just I think I like the framing of both Hereditary and Midsommar a bit more. You know, Hereditary is a straight up horror movie. Midsommar is more of like a cult horror movie. And this one is kind of a horror movie in many ways, but maybe because it hits a little too close to home. Like this is a movie about the horror of anxiety. That's ultimately what it is, and I think this is one of the fullest realizations, um, I think a film has ever done of showing what it's like to live like anxiety and like how warped and how weird the world can seem like that. And that's something I've dealt with a bit myself, not to the extent of this character, but in high school and before college, really, I was pretty socially anxious. So a lot of the fears and a lot of the things he is going through in this movie that are made real in so many ways, I just found really very relatable. I do think it's very strange that a man that's so anxious like him is basically living in the middle of one of the very busy, neighborhoods in New York. Basically, seems like a weird place to put yourself. I would love to know the backstory of like what got Beau there. But overall, I found this to be a really interesting movie. Maybe it didn't need to be 3 hours. Maybe it is a little over long, and I could clearly see like what Ari Aster is trying to say. And I think some at some point towards the end, and we'll talk about that in spoilers. I was thinking to myself, just get over it already. Like just get it. Like tell us. I get the deal
Just
of what
get
you're saying.
over
Just
it.
just get it over with. Like get it all out there. And I think this movie does do that. But I do find it more frustrating than his other movies. And those aren't like easy to absorb movies either. But I was really impressed by what Hereditary did and by the sort of scope of Midsummer as well. Like that is just a really fascinating movie. This one's really interesting, mainly for Joaquin Phoenix's performance, and I think for a lot of people around him. I especially like who's the guy who plays his therapist who shows up in all sorts of things. But there's a point in this movie where even that guy who's like jovial Santa Claus type guy, I love him whenever I see him. He's in Lady Bird too. He's just really creepy at a certain point in this movie too. And it's just like this movie hits on really interesting things.
Stephen
But yeah,
McKinley Henderson.
yes, it did not need to be 3 hours. I think that's my main thing. Like towards the third hour, is like I got to get out of here. Like just tell me what are you trying to say? Is it any different than what you're saying at the beginning of the movie? It really isn't, but it's certainly fascinating, as all Ari Aster projects tend to be.
Jeff Kanata, I'm so curious what you thought of Beau is Afraid.
Well, Dave, I guess you could say what I thought of Beau is Afraid is best summed up in the form of a limerick. The question is if you should try to see this film. Will it even apply to me? Let me help you decide. It's 3 hours inside somebody else's anxiety.
Nice.
Thank you.
Good rhyme for anxiety. Yeah.
Appreciate it. I agree with Devindra that it should not have been 3 hours. It really overstays its welcome. And it really, by the end, and we'll talk about the end in spoilers, but by the end, it is really just jackhammering the same redundant point home. And I'm like, why are we still here? And the end is like, we stayed around for that? That's why we kept staying in this? But we'll get to the end in spoilers. What I want to say is that I thought the first, hour of this movie more, I thought I was going to absolutely love it.
Really fun. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Wild.
It's an incredible depiction of someone's inner life projected out into the world. Like the way that all of the things in life are scary and the big outdoor world. I mean, there is a shot very early on in this movie where Joaquin Phoenix, who plays the main character, Beau, is just walking, and we're just kind of panning along through the world, and it's just insanity all around. And I thought, what an amazing way to capture what it's like to be alive in 2023. Like the just depravity that we take for granted all the time, the ambient noise of urban life, the way people treat one another and react to one another, and how there are these little pockets of drama that are happening that are unrelated to the other little pockets, but are, as terrifying and intense and overwhelming in just little pockets. And he's just walking through all of them. I was like, this is genius. I've never seen a movie express that sort of inner fear and anxiety and sense of disquiet in an artful way like this. But man, does the movie lose its way. I think we go on this wild journey. It's this Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole, meeting all these wild characters. There's a prolonged sequence with Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan that I found to be fascinating. There's moments where I laughed out loud that we'll talk about in spoilers. There's so much, and then it like shoots off into this like weird fable for a little while where he's watching this play, and it's just too much. And then when we ultimately get to the end, and it's like, well, it was all for that? That is what it was all for? I found myself profoundly disappointed, and like I can't recommend this movie to anybody. If you really want to go through something, this movie will do that for you. If you want to sit in a theater,
there's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it. That's for
Yeah.
sure. If you want to sit in a movie for 3 hours, I mean, I feel like this is going to be David Chen catnip. If you want to sit in a movie for 3 hours and be
live
put
in someone's
through,
misery,
be miserable by the end of it, and watch someone else miserable constantly, and kind of understand why. But it gets to this point of being so oversized and unrelatable. It starts in this very relatable human place, and it gets to this. They talk about specificity is general. Like the more specific you are, the more general.
Finding universal in the specific.
Yes, right. This movie flies in the face of that. This movie proves that idiom wrong, because I believe that as this movie gets more and more specific to Beau's problem, it gets more and more outlandish and oversized and unrelatable ultimately. And I think it fails by the end. And I find it like, if this movie was like a brisk 2 hours, if it lost literally an hour of its runtime,
yes,
and just trimmed so much of the fat that's on it, I think it could be a really powerful experience. Ultimately, it's fatiguing, it's too much, and it ends in a place where it's like, why did I even waste my time with this? That's my feeling.
Cut to Dave cackling in the theater like De Niro in Cape Fear.
I've already talked about this on the main show and what we've been watching, but I thought this was a masterpiece. I loved the movie, and as
you wouldn't
you guys,
change a thing.
Wouldn't change a thing. I mean, how rare is the opportunity to be able to step into someone else's anxieties? And it may not be something you want to do. It may not be something most people want to do, but this movie is extremely uncomfortable. It's very anxiety producing. It invokes that anxiety, but also, I gotta say, for the most part, visually inventive throughout. And there are just great concepts introduced throughout the entire movie. Arguably too many, but there's some things that are like it's introduced and it's like, wow, like you could spend a whole half a movie on just this one concept.
Yeah,
for sure.
The movie doesn't even follow up on. And I think we all have said in the past we like movies to be more ambitious than not, and I think this is definitely one of those movies that's very, very ambitious.
It's a good word for this movie. Yep.
And I can't fault it. Yes, it's not. I agree with you. It taxes the idea of finding universality in the specific, and I think there's a lot of things. It's a very deeply Jewish experience that's being depicted in this movie, and at the same time, there's so much of it that I felt like I relate to or could see in my own life. So I thought it was great. I think it's, but at the same time, I agree with you. I don't know that I have not recommended this to anyone. In fact, like I think I might have texted you, Jeff, after I saw it. I was like, Beau is Afraid is like one of the most incredible movies I've ever seen. I don't recommend you go see it. You know?
But we're going to make it a main review, so you have to.
Yeah.
Spread the joy.
Yeah. So anyway, I think those are some good overall thoughts. Like I loved it. Devindra and Jeff had a mixed experience with it, but it is certainly provocative. And
I will say this: it has flashes of utter brilliance.
Yeah.
I mean, flashes of it. And like I said, I just wish we could isolate those and streamline them and make it a more palatable experience overall. Not in the sense of like make it less uncomfortable. I was into the uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
I was into the discomfort of being inside this experience with this guy, but it meanders and it goes to places. I'm like, what? You know, what
was the point of that?
Hat at a certain point, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about spoilers for Beau is Afraid, starting right now. I think we all agree that the first 30, 45 minutes is really, really brilliant stuff. Just some great moments, very clear to understand. You know, Devindra, you said, how is it that Beau came to live in this terrible place?
Yeah.
And it's like, is he really living in it though? That's a question I have, you know, or is what we're seeing just like his mental projection of everything that's going on?
I mean, yeah, everything is up for grabs. Yeah.
I thought you were saying, is he really living?
Is he really living?
Yeah. But there's obviously many elements of Beau's life in the first 30, 45 minutes that are like very relatable. The idea of like
trying to get to the airport when you've overslept, just that, and then leaving the keys in the thing, and then the keys not being all of that sequence. I was like, oh, this is brilliant.
Yes. And like being across the street when people are piling into your apartment, and like having this nightmare of like, I remember when I was a kid, it's like, you can't leave the apartment door. You can't prop it open, or else like who else is going to get into that? Who else is going to get into the apartment?
It's the climax of Mother, Aronofsky's Mother, is basically the opening of this movie. Of the insanity there.
Absolutely, I was very much reminded. Very similar movie in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Darren Aronofsky's movie, but
another Mother movie. Wow.
Yeah.
I loved all the stuff with people destroying his apartment. The stuff about like leaving notes and like
I can't get that out of my head.
You
make it louder.
I ask you to turn it down and you turn it up.
Amazing.
It's like one of them. Yeah.
Amazing. Like she's just like, what? I'm
not even doing.
I'm not doing it. It's so good. And that shot where the note slides all the way from the door all the way to his bed. Incredible.
So good. So that's kind of the first chapter of the movie, and it's like really well done. There's the guy suspended overhead, his sweat's dripping. It's like, why is that guy even there? We never even have a follow up with that.
Well, can we unpack that at least? I feel like there's a lot going on, but what is that? What is he trying to say?
I think.
Give me something.
I think it's just this idea that like, okay. I don't know if my interpretations are correct, right? But when I watch this movie, I'm like, this guy thinks like me, you know. So when I think about what that means, it's just this idea that like, you imagine if your apartment or house is like these cavernous spaces, you imagine like at any point there could be someone up there.
He came in right after an infiltration.
Just hiding out. And so that's all that is. That's all that I think. That's all that is. It's just dude, hide that. No reason why he would be there. Right? Why there's no explanation for it. Like
one of the people who infiltrated stuck around. Like that, but his fear. Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if I have license to say this. I'm going to say it anyway.
Oh shit!
My beautiful and lovely wife. Anytime she walks into a hotel room or even sometimes our house, she will check every single closet behind every shower curtain.
Great.
Extremely reasonable.
She's seen more movies. Yes.
For people. Like she's looking for reasonable. People.
Yeah.
This to me is, I can't help but step through the logic of what is the expectation that a person is standing in the has been waiting for hours in the hopes to just, but that is maybe the sort of
maybe it's a comedy of errors, Jeff, where they broke in and then you guys came home and they had to change their plan and they hid in the closet.
Which in my wife's mind happens is likely to happen enough that every single time it's worth the energy and worry anyway. I love her with my whole heart.
She's there to protect you, Jeff.
Yeah,
but you don't care.
Like
you're just walking into
it
rooms.
Sounds like she's being smarter than Jeff
in the
to me. Like she's the hero of this situation. FYI, but go ahead.
This I think is the fundamental thing that this movie is depicting in that sequence is just there is no rational explanation for any of it. It is just. Wouldn't it be horrible if you're taking a bath completely naked and a person fell on you? That would be awful. And that is what Beau is constantly thinking is like, what is the worst thing that could happen right now?
It's true.
On a slightly more serious note, I think, first of all, I just want to, for the record, 100% serious. Everything your wife is doing is reasonable.
Yes.
I think. And then also on a serious note, like my version of that is after I watched the Matt Reeves movie, Let the Right One In, or Let Me In, the remake, I will check the backseat of my car every single time I get in before I close the door, because of how horrifying the kind of backseat attack was.
Horror movies are a guide for life. You know, everything
absolutely.
you need to like prepare yourselves for.
Now, if ever I take a bath, gonna look at the ceiling.
Look straight up.
So okay. So part one of the movie is really good. Then there's like the movie like has like multiple chapters, right? Second chapter is with Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane's character. And I love this part too, because there's this idea of like when you are being taken in by people or when you are spending time with people, like there's this horrible idea that like you are always imposing on them in some way. And then there's this amazing moment too when Amy Ryan writes him the note that's like, stop being so incriminating. You're like, this fear that you're like being suspicious in some way.
Dude, that sequence of him staying there, Nathan Lane being like the sweetest, creepiest dude.
Yeah.
My brother.
Constantly like making him stay longer, but in the nicest way possible.
Yeah.
All of that is so well done. And then maybe my favorite moment of the entire movie. I don't know. Parker Posey's pretty good too. But maybe my favorite moment of the entire movie is the daughter drinking the blue paint.
Oh my god,
dude!
Horrifying.
Like telling him he's a wimp for not drinking the paint with her, and then like the moment of we cut to Amy Ryan coming in the door and seeing him, and he's holding her limp body with blue all over him and her. Like that image is top tier. I mean, the movie has these flashes of utter genius, which is why it's so disappointing to me that it doesn't hold together over the long term, because there are these, like, that is one of the most disturbing, kind of odd, thrilling moments of just like, what do you even do in that
Teenagers
situation?
Are terrifying, and they are unhinged, and they are powerful. They can do so many things. One thing I want to point out, throughout this entire movie, even when it started to like bore me and lose me at the end, I did constantly think like, man, Joaquin Phoenix is just like game for anything. Like he really giving his all to this movie. Honestly, just as he did for Joker and for a lot of other movies. And I don't like Joker very much, but at least he constantly like pushes himself as an actor. I think this is yet another example of that.
Yeah. When we were talking about concepts that are introduced, the idea of there's a security camera watching him and then he starts like fast forwarding through it. That's like a very chilling idea.
And you see
the end of the movie
later in the movie.
You see the end of the movie basically. But anyway, then he runs away and
the guy chases him like the guy from Raising Arizona. Once again, we're bringing up Raising Arizona. Everyone's going back and like referencing it in their movies.
Guy chases him. He ends up in the middle of this like commune where they perform plays in the middle of nowhere.
I feel like this is where the movie just gets off the rails for me.
It's very Synecdoche, New York. I recorded a bonus audio on my Patreon where I talked about how like I don't know if you guys have seen Enter the Void. The Gaspar Noé movie. Devindra's seen it. Okay. Well, Jeff, I don't know if
never
this is
see that movie, Jeff. Another one.
It's not that bad. I'm gonna try to explain it to you, but basically in the movie Enter the Void, the director's cut, the idea behind the movie is like when you die, your brain releases the same chemicals that it releases when you like take acid or drugs. And so like you go on one last big high, right? And the idea of Enter the Void is you are seeing one person's last high from the first person perspective. And there's a moment in the movie Enter the Void where he's like his soul is leaving his body, and he goes around seeing how his death impacts everyone, right? And then he has this dream of like, maybe I could go back in to my body and like be reunited with my family and friends and loved ones. And so he starts fantasizing about that. And then at one point, his friend says to him, hey, actually, you can't go back into your body. You were cremated. They burned you, so you can't come back to life again. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And then like he kind of like snaps out of it. That's how I felt in this movie when Joaquin Phoenix is talking with his children. It's like the most beautiful moment. The acting is amazing. And then he's like, and that's why I never had sex with anyone. And then the children are like, well, if you didn't have sex with anyone, how are we here? And then it's just like really like something is here that's like not supposed to be here kind of moment. It's very unsettling. I like that. I like that, it's upsetting, but did it have any impact on you? Like, because this whole like fantasy of like his whole life is like culminating in this moment when he meets his children in the forest, right? Like, how did that strike you at all, Jeff?
Oh man, I mean, there are sort of I was impressed with the visualization of this experience. It uses some sort of the the theatricality of it. I appreciate it, right? I mean, obviously is using theater as a metaphor, but it's also theatrical in its presentation and using old age makeup that looks like old age makeup, right? And these the sort of scene props and things that there are moments where he's like walking through and the foliage is changing and all that stuff. I thought all that was actually beautiful, but man, I struggled to come to grips with why this was happening and why this was happening now and what we were supposed to get out of it. And it felt like a detour for the most part. And the entire notion, I mean, the big idea here that you're referencing, that this section of the movie is introducing, is that his mother had presented him with this notion that has seared into his psyche and scarred him for life.
Inception, yes.
That, that having sex with someone will kill them.
Yeah.
Which is a science fiction concept. I mean, it is far afield. You have like abuse and even not even as far as abuse, but just sort of a dysfunction, familial dysfunction and mother-son issues that the movie eventually gets to. But I think this is part and parcel with the problem, is that we start at this very relatable place. And even if it's over the top and even if it's more intense than anything I've ever personally felt, I have a window into it. I have a way to relate to it because it is an exaggeration of a key element of something that we can all understand. But then you get to these things that I feel disconnect from that and get into a place of just Looney Tunes, where it's like, well, okay, this is a level of dysfunction that is not relatable to me. And I've struggled with understanding why we have gone to this extreme in this movie.
When you say this level of function, you mean the idea that the mom would tell him that he would die if he had sex? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I think it's more than that. It's not just you'll die if you have sex. It's that you have this magic sperm that your father also had, and
you have a weak heart, basically, and you can only take so much. Yeah.
Maybe I misinterpreted it, but it felt much more
it's like a curse
than that.
I dare say. Okay, go ahead, Devindra. Go ahead.
I say it feels like a curse. Like, that's the thing, and also it's like the beginning of the movie. Like, it's an extrapolation of what I think a lot of parents do, of like guilting their kids into behaving in certain ways by giving you the most extreme example of something. And Beau just took that fully to heart because his mom literally controlled his universe and would freak out if he like tried to leave it. So
absolutely. And I think in terms of the relatability, I think there's many people out there, not naming any names, who might feel emasculated by their moms, like, or have at times felt emasculated by their moms, and that this is like taking that, as with everything in this movie, taking that idea all the way to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
Full emasculation.
It's not just like you feel emasculated, but like literally your mom is saying you can't have sex or else you'll die. That's kind of that idea to explore to its extreme. Okay, but you're right. I do think it's a little bit of a detour. It felt very Synecdoche-esque to me, like exploring the psyche and other imagined lives. So then Beau finally hitchhikes the rest of his way to his mom's estate. He's just missed the funeral, which is, by the way, is very shameful. To like
so
not be
shameful.
there, you know. And
I loved all the Richard Kind voicemails where there's, you know, it's so perfect to have Richard Kind like stressing you down about being a bad son. It's great.
He reconnects with his old girlfriend. They have sex, and then she dies instantly. I love the whole Parker Posey stuff.
That was amazing.
Amazing.
That section was amazing.
Playing Mariah Carey on Spotify on the phone, like over and over. It's just like, oh, this is. And then she dies and like frozen in place. And the way they do, where they carry her body away while she's frozen, like rigor mortis, whatever the heck, it was amazing. Like, just looked incredible.
I'm gonna have to once again. Let's unpack that. What happened there? You know, because it is weird that I could buy the mom being like, okay, yeah, actually this was all a test and I've been watching you the whole time. That makes sense. The mom and her helpers are just like, okay, this frozen dead woman just like put her in the closet or something. Like she expected that to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's like, hey, okay, so the more we get into this movie, the more like
I'm just asking for
I'm just
basic,
taking a stab in the dark
thing.
now.
Yeah.
Like I have no confidence in these guesses, right? But I think
that's
it's
the
just
problem with Beau is that he did a stab in the dark, if you know what I mean.
Nice, yeah. But I think it's just this idea that like, okay, the worst thing that didn't happen didn't happen, or the worst thing that could have happened didn't happen.
Sure.
But the second worst thing that happened that could have happened did happen, right? Which is like she dies mid-climax.
Was it a setup for her to die because she was working with her mom and his mom
there
knew?
You go.
His mom knew
could have
who
been.
she was?
Could have been. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if that was the intention.
I mean, I think the movie has, by that point, just become so, disconnected from any sense of grounded reality that...
Yeah. But then, so then the mom is alive. And at first I thought this was a dream sequence. I was like,
yeah.
But it's like, no, of course it would be an elaborate ruse by his mother to fake her own death to see like how he would behave and all the ways in which he would fall short. And also, by the way, she's been recording and listening to all of his therapy sessions this whole time.
And Stephen McKinley Harrison, when he is laughing, his only response is,
it's very creepy.
That's so creepy. It's just so like the worst betrayal of a therapist. But yeah, this movie gets so much of that.
Then there is he goes to the attic. There's a penis-shaped monster there,
as you do.
You know, and then it's like, then he
so it goes.
He leaves the estate and goes on a motorboard.
Can we Devindra style unpack that, please?
Let's unpack that a little.
Mom says, "Don't go to the attic. Don't go to the attic. You can't see what's up there." Was that supposed to be Dad? Dad is the penis-shaped monster?
The dad is the penis.
The guy chained up his food for the penis monster?
Well, first of all, that Beau has a brother. I think. Because there's a separate dude there.
There's a separate
Beau's
dude there.
Brother.
Yeah.
Again,
and
the hat on a hat at this point.
Yeah, that's
feels
true.
To me.
That's true.
And then a penis like monster, which like I've read the oral history of how they put that together. That was amazing. Yeah. You're welcome.
I started cackling. I was at like a 10 p.m. screening, and there were two other people in the theater. But I started cackling when that happened. Like, oh, Ari Aster, you madman.
Yes,
of course, it's a penis monster.
You dog. Vanity Fair had a piece called "How Beau is Afraid 16-foot Penis Monster Came to Life."
Is that the title?
That's the title of the article.
Spoilers. Vanity Fair.
Yeah, it's not how big the penis monster is. It's how
true.
You use it.
It's how you use it.
But yeah, they had to answer all these questions like, is there a face on the monster? Are there teeth? Is it circumcised? You know?
Yeah.
Sure. So anyway, questions. So many important questions. So the idea is that your father is a penis that your mother has kept chained up in the attic for years, right? Like, just as she has emasculated you in some ways, so has she kept your father's penis in a trap of some kind, right? That's kind of
Sure.
All right, I'll buy it.
And who can't relate to that?
And then the crazy soldier guy comes and kills the father.
Yes.
Okay.
That part I don't think really represents anything.
Nothing
philosophical.
That's just fun.
That's
That's just a
just
little
fun.
fun.
That's just a little fun and games for you. So then he leaves on a motorboat and then enters a cave. And then he finds he's put on trial by his mom. And I think it's Richard Kind acting as the lawyer, where like they show every footage of him.
It's just so redundant at that point, it feels to me.
I would agree. The trial is a weird place to end it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, do we really need this at this point? Haven't we seen him suffer? The whole movie has been the trial.
Exactly. Yes.
That part I agree with you is like, we don't really, but at the same time, it's like, I do think the ending was really effective where he like gets capsized and then he drowns or whatever. And then the movie just ends abruptly. Like,
that was super effective. He's like stand there going, can anybody help me? No. All right. No one can help me. That's our takeaway.
Yep.
No one can help you.
And then if you didn't have a trial, then you probably have ended when he's like wandering away from the estate. And I guess that
I don't know. I thought the movie was going to end when he gets in the boat and he just going in the boat. I was like, blackout. But when we have this extended sequence of, it just felt so redundant and so it didn't add anything. Like what? I mean, whatever. It's a disappointment to me because there's so much in this movie that's brilliant. There's so much in this movie that's really effective.
Any other brilliant things that come to mind, Jeff, that we may or may not have discussed? I mean,
oh my God. I mean, there's so much in this movie that happens. Oh God.
I think the architecture of the house is like really interesting. I haven't seen a house like that at the end where like
for a woman whose child is very anxious, the architecture of that house is a death trap. Just like 15-foot drop-offs, no railings. What are you talking about? Who approved this?
I do like the scene. I think you alluded to earlier, Devindra, where he goes and he starts looking at his mom's company's timeline, and he realizes his mom has controlled his entire life, basically.
Yeah, he's living in one of her buildings.
Yeah, living in one of her buildings, eating her medication, eating her foods, like.
It also seems like the whole world is eating her medication too. So I don't. Okay, or is that his perception of the world is just following his mom? I don't know.
One of the things I love most in movies. In fact, we made a show that utilized this at one point years ago. One of the things I love most in movies is when there's something happening in the foreground and then there's something deep in the background that's happening that is almost more interesting than what's happening in the foreground. And this movie does that a lot. And there's a number of sequences at the Amy Ryan, Nathan Lane house where like Beau is doing something in the foreground and in the background, Amy Ryan is like trying to resuscitate this guy. And there's all this chaos. The dude running around, smash. He runs and we pan with him and he runs and leaps into the lake and all of that. That to me, where I appreciated the movie most was when it felt like this unhinged, that feeling I often have of being in the world and not being able to understand why the world is the way it is. That I'm just trying to hold on to my little grip on reality while things that seem totally unhinged, totally out of control are happening all around me. And this movie does that so well. It conveys that sense of you can try to be calm and safe and normal, but the world isn't, and I love that aspect to it. And it happens not just in the beginning, but throughout the movie where these things where just stuff's happening around him and he can't grapple with it. Anyway.
Yeah, agreed. Devindra, any other thoughts on Beau is Afraid before we wrap it up here?
I mean, like all Ari Aster movies, I think it's interesting. There's a lot of ideas in here, but I also think like, I don't know, some sort of focus or like be this long, but also give me something more. Because I think the ultimate takeaway here is like this man has a very controlling mother who has like basically turned his life into a ball of anxiety, and that's how he suffered through it. And it did. We didn't talk much about like his experience with the girl, on the ship, and I feel like that part just made me feel very sad. Like this is basically a drama reboot of the 40-Year-Old Virgin. That's what it is. And I felt so sad for him as a person that's like, oh man, he's been pining after this girl for so long, and then you have this picture of this teen girl in a in a swimsuit as you're an older man, like that is getting weirder and weirder. And then he finally like gets the thing he wanted, and it's just a failure. Like that is the true sadness of this movie for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so disturbing too, where we see the flashback of her just like, wait for me.
Yeah.
He did.
Heartbreaking.
It reminds me of Synecdoche, honestly. There's a spoilers for Synecdoche, but in the movie Synecdoche, the main character falls in love with this woman. They are apart for decades. They reconnect, and then she literally dies after they sleep together.
It's true. Yeah.
So yeah,
this is he just pulled a lot from Synecdoche, huh? Yeah.
I honestly, if you had just plopped me down in front of this and said this was a Charlie Kaufman movie, I'd be like, I buy it. I buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to like late Kaufman,
Yeah,
or late Alex Garland. You know, like,
yeah.
No, Alex Garland's not as funny as this usually. So
let me
It's
ask
not
you
as
this
funny.
question though, Dave. Is there any universe where the ending of this movie isn't just supposed to make you mad? Like the way you've been in here for 3 hours and that's the way it ends. Like it's trolling you, right? You're supposed to feel.
Yeah, I felt
you're
mildly
supposed to
trolled by it. I felt mildly trolled by the end.
Yeah.
I feel like that is part of the, like, I think Ari Aster knows what he's doing, and the takeaway is mother always wins. Mother always wins.
I guess.
No.
Well, I think one of the most compelling parts of the movie to me is people thinking. There is this really awful feeling that the movie conveys of like, this guy, he's just at worst hapless.
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
he's just trying to do his thing. He's not like a cruel, malevolent guy.
Right.
But like at every step of the way, people think he's an asshole. Like you're not there for your mom, and his mom always assumes the worst thing about him. And there's just like
He thinks they think he's an asshole.
Yeah, right,
is the
exactly.
ultimate
And there's
thing.
not even a defensiveness. It's just kind of like,
Yep.
kind of like it's felt as kind of this oppression of like, oh, I wish I could get out from under this. People thinking this way,
Mhm.
and then it kind of culminates with like this trial of like, here's every single terrible thing you've done, right?
And the crowd, I mean, there is an idea of voyeurism here. There's the idea of we as the audience, as voyeurs watching this. What sort of freaks are we to sit for 3 hours and watch a man get tortured and enjoy it? David Chen.
Not sure I enjoyed it.
Well, some people did. So what is their reason?
Dave Chen did.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. I did. Yeah, I mean, like, what kind of satisfying ending would there have been though? You know, like, this guy has had all these anxieties put into him by his mom, or feels all the anxieties around his mom, and it's like, what is the best case scenario? What is the best case scenario? Dying on dying in front of a trial, like in front of everyone that you know. You know, like that's.
I mean, I hate to be pat and, you know, obviously this movie is attempting to do something that is very subversive and is contrary to what one expects. It is trying to subvert your expectations. And I respect that. But where it felt like we were leading with the whole Parker Posey thing is like, oh, maybe this guy will find a little happiness in life.
And then Parker Posey. We all crush on Parker Posey. It's great.
It rips that away it just completely crushed it. So the movie does seem to be building to like, oh, the girl he pined after that he waited for, she's actually there. She's actually available. We're gonna have this kind of movie ending of him finding a little piece of joy in the world despite all of the anxiety, despite this crazy adventure that he's been on to get there that's been harrowing and disturbing on a number of levels.
Beavis and Butthead, he's finally able to score. That's really his goal. That's his goal in life.
But I think he has genuine affection for this person.
Yes.
And then the movie's just like, no, fuck you.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating, Jeff, because at no point did I think that would end well.
Oh yeah. No. This is too good. This is is too good.
At no point was I thinking, oh, this is gonna have a happy ending.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we've established our cynicism levels, you know,
throughout the course of the episode.
We have, yes.
But I think that's kind of like, that's the joy of the movie. That's the pleasure of the movie, is seeing in what ways it will go wrong for him.
Fair.
Do you know?
I mean, it's just a different kind of pleasure, I guess. But
I cannot wait for Ari Aster's uncut, longer version of this movie, subtitle for David Chen. That's what it's going to be for. The person asking for it.
At the end of the day, it is really impressive that Ari Aster made a movie. thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.